Hey, what's going on, guys? Aarava here, and welcome back to the Pitlane Podcast, episode number 80 today, to preview the Azerbaijan Grand Prix and talk about Formula One news in general, the biggest being the 2019 and 2021 regulations being announced. We use your host, myself, Aarav, Callum, and Tom, and with a special guest here, Luke Smith, the journalist who's an actual journalist in the paddock. So for once, it won't just be three of us waffling about stuff that we might not know about. We've actually got a genuine person from the news that we all read, on the internet here today. Luke Smith. Luke, welcome aboard. I mean, we've known you for a couple of years now on Twitter, so it's absolutely awesome to finally have you on the podcast. Why don't you kind of tell us a bit about yourself, like a little bit of background if people don't know who you are?
Oh, well, firstly, thanks so much for having me on. I've been listening to the podcast for a while. Big fan of it, so it's really cool to come on and chat with you guys. So I'm a Formula One journalist. I've worked in F1 since 2013. I used to work with American broadcaster NBC Sports, supporting their coverage. And as of this season, I've been working with Crash.net, one of the main independent websites in the F1 paddock. I've been attending... I've done Australia and Bahrain so far this season. I missed China, but I'll otherwise be in the paddock for the rest of the season, trying to bring all the news and gossip and interviews from the paddock.
Yeah, so real insider here today, guys. So we can try and get some, any details that, I'm curious if, the paddock has a different idea to maybe what we three have thought, on certain issues or anything like that. But I guess we'll get straight into it. So the biggest kind of news that kind of came out of Formula One was really the 2019 technical tweaks and the 2021 engine changes. So Callum, do you want to kind of take us through that firstly, and then we'll kind of talk about it, I guess?
Yeah, so quite big news actually that we got these changes because we've been waiting for them for quite a long time, and obviously it's to help kind of close up the field and really improve the racing as well. And obviously we've seen a change to 2019 and 2021. Obviously 2021 is when we'll see a bigger impact from Liberty Media. But in terms of the 2019, we've got a new regulation basically stating that the driver will be separate from the car. So obviously us three instantly went Mon the Hulkenberg because we're a huge fan of Nico Hulkenberg, and I'm guessing Luke, I think you're pretty much on the bandwagon of Hulkenberg, but this means that bigger drivers basically get an advantage. I'm not going to go into the full technical details, but what I'll say is, previously, teams were able to use ballast with a lighter driver to move it around the car to improve, obviously, the performances. However, this time round, the car will have its own separate weight and the driver will have his own separate weight. That will be added together afterwards, meaning that drivers don't have to be as lean as possible. I'm not sure what impact that will have when it comes to their driver fitness, how well they bulk up or take the bulk off to try and keep it down, and how they balance that versus core fitness. But this does mean that the larger drivers and the taller drivers get a fairer opportunity to race hard against the smaller ones, such as you've got a Hamilton versus a Nico Hulkenberg. But I think it's really good to see. I think it's something that's been long overweighted because I think as much as a driver can push themselves, there's only so far you can push yourself before you literally need to have surgery to take a bit of bone out your leg to make yourself a bit smaller. But I'm not entirely sure what you guys think. I think it's really good movement for the sport.
I'm going to go in now because this is my cue. So Ara started, Callum's spoken, so I'm going to go next before you jump in, Luke. And this is great news. I'm very excited. I'm a massive Hulkenberg supporter. I think, like I said in the last podcast, severely underrated with a lot of potential. And, he's knocking on 30 now. So this might be the sort of opening he needs to really make himself even more announced. It doesn't make it any easier in terms of him cutting the weight. He's still going to have to get very lean to still be competitive. It just means that obviously
he can maybe afford to have one burger.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a cheat meal a week or something. So it's much better for him. But overall, 2017 regs, as far as I'm aware, these aren't final. There's still possible future alterations, but these are the ones that are set in stone so far. So this is very, very exciting, and it's almost a bit of an emergency fast track. Instead of waiting until 2021, which is what I thought would happen, they're trying to make whatever they can in terms of action-wise happen for next season. So it's also good in terms of making these changes now, less than a calendar year before 2019, because it means teams already have to change in the way they prep their season for next year already. So it's sort of a last-minute change in the F1 world. So that's very, very good. And I think we all like last-minute changes, especially if it means it's going to throw everything up into the air and get rid of all the previous database we have. So, very good news.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a very positive step. I think it is taking that disadvantage away from the heavier drivers, your Nico Hulkenbergs, and one who really struck me during his time in F1 was Mark Webber. I mean, he really looked quite gaunt in his face, and it was quite interesting when he moved to WEC. You saw him gain not like a lot of weight, but a little bit of weight, and he was like, I'm a little bit more relaxed about it now. And obviously, it's more of a team game in WEC, and he said that he was happy sort of being like 1 or 2 tenths slower than, say, Brendan Hartley or Timo Bernard. And he said, I'm a little bit heavier, that's because I'm taller, and I'm totally okay with that now. Whereas in F1, it's all on the driver, it's all on them. So yeah, it's a very good step. It means that you're not going to have a Hulkenberg disadvantage just because he's tall. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it does maybe level the field a little bit more, and whether that's what's been stopping Hulkenberg from getting his podium all these years.
Who knows? Carl, I think you're like also. I think it also means good news for Ocon as well, which he's a pretty fairly tall driver, so that's good news for him as well.
Yeah, that'll be quite funny. Like straight away, 2019. That's the thing that does it. Hulkenberg straight away, first race on the podium. Bosch. That's the thing that did it the entire time in his time in F1. Just like that was the bad thing. But along with the weight, I guess the next biggest one was the whole fuel increase, which is that's I think the juiciest one actually, because there's a lot of debate about, it seems great on the surface, but then there's kind of other things you have to factor in, because it's literally just the fuel amount they've changed. They've not changed the fuel flow and the engine limit, as far as I know right now. Obviously, it could change till later in the season, but right now they're going to keep that 3 engine limit. So that kind of statement of increasing the fuel amount to allow the drivers to push the entire race, I don't know how much that's actually going to be the case.
They're about 5 years too late with this one, I think, in my opinion. If they'd done this in 2014 or 15, then yeah, fair enough. But it's got to a point now where it's just so optimized. I really don't think there's a massive amount. I mean, it's good news because there's nothing bad that's going to happen from it. I mean, you're only going to get a bit more performance. It's like there's no real bad thing from the news.
Yeah.
But the thing they would have wanted to change would have been the fuel flow rate. But even still, like you mentioned, 3 engines a season, 21 races. Really, are you wanting to really put more stress through the engine? Personally, I'm a believer of this will be the last season we see 3 engines in F1. I don't care how much they push the sort of reliability side of things. If they're going for these sort of reg changes to encourage more flat-out pushing, then it only makes logical sense in my head that they at least add on 1 more engine allocation for next year. So we'll see. But it's I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I think it's a good step in the right direction.
No, it's kind of halfway. I'm curious, Luke, like the paddock in general, I saw on like Twitter, like different journalists I got the feeling it was kind of a little bit half and half, kind of like, yeah, it's great, but a little bit underwhelming maybe in the paddock from your perspective maybe.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I also think that there wasn't a huge amount they could have done more before 2021. That is really the cutoff point, and I think anything we get before 2021 is we've got to treat it as a bonus, really. So I think it's a good step. It will certainly aid things a little bit, and it'll be races such as Australia where before the race the drivers are getting really stressed, saying, it's going to be so tough on fuel management. And obviously the VSC and safety car did change that. It made it a lot easier. But it'll ease things a bit for them, which is good. But as you correctly say, that as long as we have this 3 engine limit per season, it's not going to matter how much fuel they've got. They're going to still have to be sort of conserving it. You're still going to have, as in Australia, Hamilton backing off in the closing stages, thinking, I could catch him, but I don't want to cook my engine in the process.
I mean, also, sorry, I've just chiming in here as well. It's kind of self-inflicted, these fuel issues as well, because teams don't fill the tanks. They try to they basically try and bring it down as much as possible to get as much performance. So it's kind of like, well, here's the big fuel tank, but we're still not going to fill it. We're still just going to try and push it as much as possible and hope for that VSC, hope for that safety car, and let's see how we do. And obviously, if they don't get the safety car, it's just a rub of the green, a little bit of luck involved. So it's very wish-washy.
We're going to see it come into effect is maybe when like a fast car gets stuck behind the pack and they get the chance to sort of give it a bit more, engine power to get through, like certain overtakes where they can maybe, if you factor in like just fantasy land, but you factor in the F1 game modes, you start having maybe Max available to you during the race, and they can just give that extra bit of oomph to try and get a move done. But it's like I said, it's not a bad thing, but I don't think we're going to see a major benefit.
Better than
from
nothing, I guess. Yeah, better than
Exactly.
nothing. Like Luke said, just a bonus. But yeah, I mean, the way they did it in like all the articles I've seen, like quoting what Liberty Media kind of said, it almost made it sound like Liberty Media wanted to spin it like, oh, every engine mode can do party mode for the entire race long with this extra amazing 5 kilograms or 10 kilograms of fuel. So they tried to put definitely a positive spin on it because I think
Clutching
a lot
at
of
straws.
Yeah, I think all of us were kind of getting anxious of like, well, is there going to be some details? Because I remember, like, what was it? A couple of weeks ago, they brought out like the initiative of what they wanted to do with the rules, and everyone was kind of like, is that it then? Like, no actual concrete details, just to kind of, it was like, it's like when like a uni club states their like beliefs for the future, what they want to do with it. It's kind of like, oh, all this wishy-washy political kind of talk and no actual detail. So at least they come out with something that's kind of like, okay, I can see the numbers. I believe later they're going to do some aerodynamic changes potentially. They're still looking at that and like doing research with Ross Brawn's team, so that'll be interesting to see. I think end of April they said. I think I can see on this article.
I have a question. Is there any truth, Luke, in the rumor that the front wings might go back to circa 09 width to reduce the dirty air effect?
I think it's one of the proposals on the table, but they're considering everything at the moment. They're really, really worried about the dirty air issue at the moment and the lack of overtaking. Maybe a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to what we saw in Australia, but then again, China was a race that I think it's like the second or third easiest track to overtake on, and until we had the safety car, it was a pretty boring race.
I've got to say, yeah, China was very frustrating. I mean, like we got blessed with the safety car, and it sort of threw it all out the window, but you could really tell the dirty air was... At times, it was really frustrating. Like every single gap was no less than like 1.2 seconds just outside the RS. I think it summed up beautifully when Vettel was chasing Bottas and Raikkonen was the sort of cork in the bottle. And Vettel got to the point into turn 4 or 5 when he was literally kissing Bottas's rear tyres. And then literally within the rest of the lap before the DRS zone, Bottas pulled out an entire second. And that was the only attempt of Vettel winning the race, or at that time. Gone just like that. So yeah, I think
we need to remove that delta, don't we? This is what Lewis Hamilton's always on about.
It makes it
look worse. This large delta that you suddenly need to be 1.2 seconds faster. Like when are the front cars ever 1.2 seconds faster than each other unless you're on different tyre strategies, e.g. the second half of the Chinese Grand Prix? We need to remove that. Obviously, there is always going to be a delta because you obviously need to be faster than the car in front, but you want it to be 0.2 of a second or 0.5 of a second, not pushing a second, in which that's like a Mercedes getting past a Renault, for example. That's when do we ever get that? Only when a Hamilton or a Bottas does fall down the field. So yeah, that's quite interesting. Should we touch on the final? The 2019, which is the bionic gloves.
Yeah, I think you got that right.
Which gives I think it's like crucial medical information. I think the key one they use is Carlos Sainz. His accident in 2015 Russia, I want to say, or 2016. I can't remember what year it was. 2015. I think it was FP3, and he went head on into the barrier at the end of the curving back straight. And the medical team could not get to him quick enough. If he was in a serious condition, they'd need to find. It now provides information that the medical team can either rush a little bit more, or they can take the time knowing that the driver is okay.
To get to him. That wasn't enough that he crashed.
Oh no, it's just a broken leg, guys. Don't worry, have a cup of tea.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean. Like, at least you know that you can relax and you can sit comfy. We'll get you out.
Maybe
slowly,
not totally relax.
Hurry up.
It's
quite a theoretical thing, but is any other sports got this? Any other motorsports got the bionic
gloves?
Don't know, to be honest. I wouldn't have thought
Not
so.
that I know of.
I think if the FIA were going to put it anywhere first, it would be F1. So I think it's probably a first.
I mean, the way it sounds, I'd reckon like Formula E would take it up just because it sounds cool. Like we got bionic gloves, like just with their Gen 2 car launched that. Which, by the way, you guys see the photos from like earlier on? It was Rosenquist, I think it was, who tweeted a photo. That car looked sweet. Like that looked like a proper race car. That looks sweet.
I don't know. It looks good from some angles. I don't love it. I hate how wide the nose is at the middle part of the nose cone. At the front, it comes down to a nice tip, but
right. So you like a thick driver, but you don't want a thick car. Like you don't mind a heavier driver.
Listen,
you're not on about that.
I'm pretty sure you could fit a wow in that cockpit, bro. Like it's so wide. I don't know. Visually, it looks odd, and like the fact there's no rear wing. I mean, there is two technically. From the front and the side looks odd, but from the back it looks really nice. But it's like visually, all 4 or 5 corners of the car look completely different if you look at it from different angles.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's just sort of it's a mix.
Yeah, I think the quote was like, I think it was, I can't remember who it was. I think it was one of the Jaguar drivers quoted like saying it was a cross between a single seat and a prototype car because it was so hefty, like on the size of the car.
Like,
Yeah,
I'll be
it
honest.
comes
Right
across
now,
like
I
that.
prefer the current Formula E car. However, I'll give the new one credit because it hides the halo and makes it look very, very attractive on the car. So I'll give it credit where it's due. But yeah, I'm not really here or there.
See, this is what we need Formula One to do, though. We need to integrate the halo, and obviously that was the FIA's first attempt to really integrate it. So I feel like it's almost a good thing that Formula E's there. It's kind of like a dummy. Just kind of throw that away. Let's see what sort of ideas we can come up with. Then we'll apply it to F1 and try and hopefully come up with something maybe a little bit more juicy. I think that was all it was for the bionic hand. I don't think there was any.
Yeah, I don't think
they
there
didn't
was
really give that much
That was
information
like the
about
smallest thing. It was like one line on every article was like
like
just
bionic
bionic gloves,
hands.
by the way. So
I do have one sort of reflective thought on China, because obviously we're doing these whole short-term fixes for racing improvement, dirty air. Should we extend the DRS gap from 1 to like 1.5? Because that gap from 1 to 1.5 seems to be the sort of sweet spot where cars just can't seem to.
I'm surprised
get in
you
that
saying
zone.
that. Because you're like out of us three, usually. You're
like
the
I'm the
traditionalist.
purist, but we need DRS to make anything happen in F1. Like, I'm being realistic here. Or they try, like Bahrain, where they pointlessly and probably you could argue didn't need to extend the DRS straight on the main straight. They could have really done with that on the back straight at China, because to say it's the longest straight, the amount the cars pulled out before getting onto that straight beforehand, it sort of took away from the potential of lots of overtakes. I went sort of a bit foreign there midway through that sentence, but we'll gloss over that one. Yeah, I think if they want to do the short-term fixes, I think like Baku, for example, if they could just extend that DRS detection point to 1.5, then maybe you might get the racing you might want to achieve, especially if there's 2 to 3 DRS zones per track.
Depends on the track, really, I guess. Like,
yeah, I think it's very artificial, and the traditionalists will be up in arms if they ever heard
I absolutely agree.
consideration. But it is, at the moment, they're looking for these short-term fixes. I think it might actually not be a bad idea, to be honest. I think a second it is, yeah, it's a bit too close. So you're already in that dirty air, and okay, you're going to be able to make a few gains, but not a massive amount. Whereas 1.5, you're probably far away enough that you're not going to be losing out because of the dirty air, and then you can really start to push on.
Yeah. Also, I want to say DTM has DRS, and that's 2 seconds, I think. Their detection point.
Okay.
I think it's DTM. I want to say, I might be completely wrong here. I'm looking for like anyone else to help me here, but no one seems to know.
Asking the wrong person here.
I'm not going to rule you out. I think I remember seeing this myself. I'm not going to say no to that one.
Like their DRS is slightly different because obviously it's like a normal spoiler, so it just kind of elevates. But yeah, I think theirs is 2 seconds. Obviously that is a lot. Obviously completely different cars, completely different philosophy. But not a bad idea to be fair. And to say, but obviously, well, the thing is though, does it really change how authentic an overtake is anyway? Like a DRS overtake is still a DRS overtake.
But I'll say this for those who pipe up about certain things. I don't understand why people love Curse so much, because that's completely artificial as well.
I don't know, because that is just reusing energy, basically. That's just making an engine more efficient, and it's sort of tapping into what the hybrid engines can do. Whereas, I think, yeah,
but it's still like an assistant.
I guess it's kind of like,
yeah.
You can use it a bit more strategically though, not just
Yeah,
press
I
a
guess
button
so.
and you get.
Yeah.
like the driver
bit
can
like
like push it at
boost,
certain
basically.
points.
Yeah.
You can
And then,
defend,
like
you
Luke
can
said,
attack
it's
with it.
reusing the car, so it's kind of part of the car. Whereas DRS is tacked on, like on top of the car. You
But
have this
then
little flap that
obviously-
opens.
I heard
It's like
the
NOS.
possible proposal of having DRS available for the entire race every single lap, like
That
back in
would be
2012
crazy.
for qualifying. I think that was a proposal that I read.
That would be
I
great
don't
because
know if
remember,
it's true
like
from that,
back
Luke,
in
but
2011 where they could use DRS at any time in the qualifying lap.
It was
I
mad.
remember drivers would really push the limit.
Yeah, they
And-
would. Any short
Yeah,
straight.
you just know it's going to get to that point where in the race there's going to be a plonker of a driver that uses it at the wrong time, and the car just spins, and there's going to be a horrendous crash.
Yeah, you'll have people trying to go through Eau Rouge with DRS open.
Oh my god!
Nuts.
Well, I mean, they were doing when they had the F duct. I swear, all the way up Eau Rouge, they were still trying to get the F duct.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
one-handed.
Especially even the Renault where you had to use your hand. Yeah, that was really really dangerous thinking about it, really unsafe. So it's almost a good job they kind of got rid of that. But then again, the F duct was quite an interesting one because obviously we didn't know it was activated. Obviously, in terms of the McLaren, it was knee activated, and that was like DRS in a sense. So yeah, I think the short-term fixes aren't ever going to go down well. But until we get to 2021,
they will be artificial for now.
Yeah,
there's no way around it.
We need some changes on the car.
It's almost like up till 2021. It's kind of like a bit of an experimental period, just kind of like seeing what works, and then 2021's maybe we're putting too many eggs in one basket, but that's going to be the big reset, and it's going to be fine from then. We have the perfect formula because we tested it all in 2018, 2019, 2020.
But that's where credit goes to the busy media, because Bernie would not have tried anything. He would have just waited. So we're getting action. And also, I don't know if it's for 2019, but unanimous agreement between all F1, FIA, and sort of like the strategy group meeting things. Is that for 2019 or is that for 2021?
I think that's 2021, but I imagine we're already kind of close to that. I mean, the strategy group itself is pretty much pointless now. So you've got the F1 Commission, which is all of the teams. They all try to agree on stuff, and that's already doing some good work. So I think they just want to kind of push on that, and for 21, make sure that politically F1 is pretty streamlined.
Yeah, and speaking about 2021, I guess that brings us nicely on. It's a good segue there onto those rules. So the biggest thing really is getting rid of the MGUH, which I've already seen a lot of like really opposite sides of the fence, because you've got a lot of like technical guys on Twitter that are arguing the case of why it's bad because of all the thing to do with turbo lag and kind of having to make up the ground, basically, that not having MGUH is there. But then also it's just the simple fact of it's the most complex part of that hybrid engine, and it's the part that Honda have had real big issues with. So trying to get rid of the Honda factor issue and just generally that complexity of the part, that part probably usually the one that fails first, maybe almost. I think that was the part that failed in Gasly's car, wasn't it?
Yeah,
in Australia, so
it still costs money to make, so it's also that aspect of it as well.
True.
Which the other aim is to attract other engine manufacturers, and it looks like Aston Martin are looking very, very keen so far. So I'd say very keen, based off of what the CEO said on Twitter the other day. So it's what we want.
Yeah,
the more the merrier.
But I think I was looking at it and go, 1.6, same. V6 turbo hybrid, still the same. The thing, I'd be interested to see how, obviously this was a very technical sort of question, but I'd be interested to see how less efficient the engines will be without the MGH. Like how much
that's where the challenge comes in, because I think they're also going to up the rev limit to 15k, I think. I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's the plan.
So that's where they're going to get the louder sound from. So all of it together, if you tie in the higher fuel limit, the higher RPM, cutting down on components, like you said, but that's where the F1 challenge is, trying to find the maximum efficiency when you're up against it. So once again, it's a new challenge.
And it's also going to be a challenge for the driver as well, technically, because you don't have that. The turbo help, basically, there's going to be that kind of basically turbo lag, basically, of like, because you don't have the MGH harvesting that energy. And, usually I think it's continuously basically deploying around the lap, usually during the race. But now it's kind of a case of reading from like people who are way more smart than me that know the engines a bit more. I think it's going to be like 32 seconds will be the actual full deployment around the lap, instead of continuously kind of like drip feeding it. So, and then not out of every corner, like I said, the turbo lag is going to be something the drivers have to get used to. Again, kind of exciting, because that's what we had in 2014, all the drivers talking about have to get used to the throttle control now a lot more than what it used to be back in the V8 era. Another thing now they have to try and, get on top of is driving with turbo lag again, which I guess none of them have driven with, I don't think.
But Verstappen might actually be able to give turbo lag as an excuse when he spins at a Bahrain this time, through turn 2.
Well, rather than a technical glitch, but it'd be interesting, because I think if I'm correct, between 2013 and 2014, they had to increase the throttle travel length.
Yeah, the pedal
to help out. So I don't know whether I don't think they can really increase it anymore, because I don't think the ankle can move anymore. I think they are pushing it in terms of that aspect, but. It's quite interesting. The proposal about ERS, because they didn't really mention that, did they, about the deployment of it? Is the proposal about how it's going to be deployed over several laps instead of limited to one lap? Is that still a thing?
I have no clue about that.
What about becoming manual again? Wasn't it going to become manual again or something?
Yeah, there was rumours about it becoming more manual to the driver. And I
would love it if the driver could have it again like we used to, with an actual KERS bar, like just just for that aspect, like we mentioned, the strategic plan of like obviously they have like an overtake button, which gives them a little bit of extra juice. But I feel like if you have an actual bar where you know there's a certain amount and the driver can see a certain number on his dashboard going down to 0 every single lap, I think that's way more strategic. You know, we saw especially get the wily old fox Fernando Alonso so many times, you know, chipping away on a lap, tiny bit of a blip of curves, maybe even lifts off to get the DRS on purpose, then uses all the curves at the right point. You know, that kind of stuff's awesome to see when you have it on the screen, like all the heads-up displays. So I'd be quite cool. I'd be up for that.
Definitely, yeah. And in IndyCar as well, they've got push to pass, which works brilliantly. And at the race of the weekend, we had Will Power against Rossi at the end, and Power basically saved up all his push to pass boost through the race, so we had it all to use at the end, and it was really exciting. Yeah, just that tactical aspect, I think, because otherwise, if everyone has the same strategy, even in terms of ERS usage, it just neutralizes everything. So you kind of like, well, what's the point then?
Yeah, because you would think like most teams would probably just end up with the tyres, like we talked about Bahrain, they didn't get the numbers right on the tyres. That's why we got a great tense ending. I guess most of the time, all the teams probably run the numbers, got them all correct, and they probably deploy ERS at the same corners to try and gain the same amount of time. So it's good if the driver can make a mistake, maybe, or he used it too early here, and then he used it, you know, great, perfect timing.
Looking forward to some good old OG curse through Eau Rouge inject into my veins emoji.
Yeah.
Bit of that, flat out. Getting that extra power up the hill.
Was it when they moved into 2014 and we thought, oh my God, they're going to have 21 seconds of KERS, and we thought that'd be really exciting just because they'd be able to use it basically everywhere. But obviously it was all programmed into the car. And I think that did kind of, obviously, as every season went on, they just learned that, you need a bit of boost here, a bit of boost here, a bit of boost here, and you'll be all right. And you'll be able to do it. So it did kind of, obviously 2013, it was an overtaking tool, but now, obviously they can override it. But it felt like it took away that. Maybe that's one of the reasons why overtaking did decrease quite a bit in terms of KERS overtaking, because the drivers have very little control over where they can deploy it now. And it obviously, I know they can change the harvesting over the lap and when they start derating and when they start slowing down. But if they just enable the drivers to be a bit more, get rid of the computers behind them and let them push the button, let them see where the limits are and where they can push it.
Yeah.
But was there anything else on 2021 that we needed to cover?
I think that was it was just basically the engine. I think they've really sorted out anything else. They're still
everything else was a bit
researching 2019.
The cost cap is still up in the air, but
I'm
getting the vibe. It's just starting to get somewhere now. I think Marchione could threat as much as he wants to quit, and I'm personally one of those who thinks if Ferrari do quit, it's a big problem for F1 because they are integral to the sport, and it might not be just Ferrari who quit. Mercedes have also sort of said, we'd consider it. But Aarava Bene said, we're sort of looking at the options at the minute to see if we can make it happen. So it's almost like they are open to seeing if they can continue producing what they're doing at a lower cost. But it's going to be a very tricky subject. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it will happen. I'm hoping. I think it will.
I think there's lots of reasons to be positive about it. I think it is. We kind of went into this meeting thinking there's no way Liberty can find a middle ground that would suit everybody, and then came out with some admittedly quite vague proposals in what was actually officially put out. The added information that's sort of what we understand, it's impressive. Like they've actually managed to find quite a good line that does sort of marry up nicely with what everyone wants. Marchione said a while back he'd be laughing until the cows came home to take Ferrari out of F1 because it would cost so much less to do it. So a cost cap, okay, it means Ferrari's big advantage of having a bottomless pit to delve into goes, but they're spending less money and they still have that big marketing prowess and everything that you get with F1 you just wouldn't get in any other series. They're still going to get a $40 million a year bonus for being Ferrari. They're probably going to lose their technical veto, but that's been a long time coming. Mercedes probably have more of a right to go, this isn't for us anymore, because they've dominated so much over the last few years. They've achieved everything they need to. And as a car brand, they want to go electric. So moving to Formula E and to really focus on that would make more sense. But for everyone else, I mean, it's a great set of regulations. Claire Williams was saying she wanted to crack open a bottle of champagne. The Force India boys very, very happy as well. Fred Vassar at Sauber was a little bit more reserved, I think, just because he's kind of thinking, is this actually going to happen? But I think there's a lot more reason to be positive about it than maybe we had going into the meeting. We were maybe a bit skeptical. It's looking pretty good, though, I think.
Good advice.
Do you reckon something like, if they can't find a happy number, to put it that way, maybe like a range, so from say 175 to 125 maybe, even if it's not an exact number,
it's quite wishy-washy,
at least
though, isn't it?
cap it, but at least yeah, I know, but a number's always going to be hard to agree on, to be honest. Like I'll still will be surprised if it happens, but even if it's just a 5 million difference or 10 million difference or something, sort of give it a bit of a range,
to be a certain
maybe
percentage of that team,
you know,
because obviously put in a certain. It's in the same way that, let's say, you get fined. In some ways, when Ferrari get fined and then Sauber get fined, you're looking at it, you go, well, it's spare change for Ferrari compared to a Sauber when they speed through the pit lane or do some other thing that's worth fining. So it would, in the same way,
yeah, exactly.
I feel like this Ferrari would just kick up a fuss about that as well. But when don't they kick up a fuss, really?
Exactly.
But I think if they do manage to get it sorted, I feel like it will be amazing for Formula One, because what everyone's saying is it's just going to bring the field close.
Yeah.
And as much as we like to see a battle, we're loving this season, we're loving last season, Mercedes versus Ferrari, and then this season Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull going at it. It reminds us of 2010, 2012 when we had them seasons where you arrive at a racetrack and you don't know who's going to win. But you know who's going to be the fourth best. We don't really know who's going to be the fourth best team, but you can kind of categorise where each team will be.
There's no surprise.
Really
there's no actual.
You know who's going to fill the top
world
six
surprise.
spots.
You mean there's no?
You know that.
There's no
you know
surprise,
who's going to fill the top six. That's what you know.
You know the top six, and you know the rest, and
yeah,
you can maybe two tiers. Maybe you can separate it to three if you count the bottom teams. Obviously, that's a little bit more all over the place in terms of what track they're at. But yeah, I think the moment
just
they
like
nail
there's
that,
no Formula A and Formula B, basically, because that's essentially what we have basically at the moment.
You just see that gap. It's like, even when, I think the best way to see the gap between Formula A and Formula B is when you actually watch the Grand Prix, when you're sat in a grandstand. And I noticed this when we went to Silverstone last year. You see the front lot go, and you're like, where the hell are the midfield? Like, why are they so much slower? And you go, oh, here's Hulkenberg finally. Here's the fourth. Oh, here's the rest of them. And you think, if you're a first person watching Formula One, you think, why is there such a gap? Like, what?
You think it's like WEC? Like, is it like a 2-tier actual system?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the moment they nail it,
I'll still fall back on what we said a few podcasts ago about the whole using maybe MotoGP as a reference in terms of having factory and secondary teams and copy parts and use parts and past seasons. Luke, I don't know if you maybe heard that podcast. Basically, using the example of the current Mercedes, for example, engine users, so Force India, Williams, they could use parts from past Mercedes cars, starting from last season's car, and maybe use those to try and get them a bit further up the grid. You know, sort of try and find a bit of a fine balance, because like the grid in MotoGP this year is so close, and that is down to just how the regs are, and where the big teams don't really get a benefit, whereas the little teams do. And F1 could really try and follow in that example a bit.
Definitely, I think that's what Haas has done so well. Obviously, they've pushed the envelope as much as possible, and you get the other midfield teams sort of crying about it. But it makes sense. They're basically gone, well, why wouldn't we want the best parts? Why wouldn't we want to use as much of Ferrari as possible? They've proved that a new team can work in F1, and I think that's full credit to them to do it. But yeah, if we were, as you say, to push that much more and make it so we sort of have these like factory and satellite teams and have the likes of sort of Mercedes and Force India working closer together, I think that could only be a good thing. It could only bring the grid closer together, and that's what we want.
I think on top of this as well, sorry, I've just interjected.
I think you're going to say the same point.
China, let's use some data. We've got data to back it up now in the fact that obviously Mercedes went half a tenth faster this China, and a lot of people in the comments I noticed pointed out the fact that it was the shark fin. Apparently the shark fin had quite an aerodynamic effect at China in comparison. Obviously we saw a bit more of a difference between the 2017 and 2018 cars at Melbourne and Bahrain. But you know, if Williams and Force India had a few Mercedes parts,
Mercedes
they would
probably
be
would've-
right at the front.
Mercedes would have. You should class it as they went slower. Because like I
Yeah,
said, they qualified in ultra softs, and last year it was super softs.
But that'd be the beauty then. Like if you have
it's
like
slower.
the lower teams buying parts off them, that's the gamble they're taking of like, right, it might not work out, but
Exactly.
it's more affordable for us.
And
then,
the thing is, and the other beauty of it is, they might find something that Mercedes didn't last year, which I know sounds weird, but it happens in MotoGP where other teams just find something, whereas the big boys don't. Like Luke, you're well aware, I'm guessing, of the Zarco situation, which often occurs, which he's on last year, is well renowned for being a very poor Yamaha chassis this year, and he's making magic happen. And you know, it's that sort of aspect of, okay, where's that happened? Where's that come from? That was definitely not in the numbers. So it's that aspect of it, and I think something like that, a system like that, would definitely benefit F1 in a big way. But obviously, then there's the whole agreement, cost cap, etc.
Yeah, agreement. Yeah, I think also one of the proposals was also like changing the pay structure as well. I think limited media definitely want to make it fairer. I don't know how exactly. Obviously, Ferrari are going to get that bonus anyway on top, but I think that's like Tom kind of said, like Luke kind of said, Ferrari's Ferrari, so you know it's just kind of making it work. But if there is a pay,
well, here's the thing. Yeah, so if you want a cost cap, like, would you be happy with a cost cap? Say, for example, if it means Ferrari staying or leaving the sport, and you know, maybe same as for Mercedes or teams like Williams who are a bit more cash strapped.
Yeah.
If these teams still have a bit of a history bonus or like a championship bonus, but they're still cost capped, so they just get a bit extra on top. But it's a lot closer in terms of what they get, if that makes sense. Because personally, I'd be for that. If they can reduce a bit the historical revenue, just a bit, anyway, but still maybe give the teams just to sweeten the deal, but keep the cost cap the same for everyone. I think that would be I think that's the best we're going to get at the moment.
Their gross revenue will be up, but in terms of the competition, it's still capped.
Yeah,
that's quite clever actually. I do quite like that.
I think that's the closest you're going to get to sort of keeping everybody happy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's again sensible what they've laid out. The numbers look good. I think from what I understand, the historical payments are going to be removed completely, but there's going to be a $10 million a year bonus for engine manufacturers. So again, that is another sort of carrot to put in front of Aston Martin, in front of Porsche, to say, come and do F1, you're going to get this money. I think that's a good step. And yeah, it's quite right that basically you're saying you're going to have a cost cap, so your costs are going to be reduced, or say about the same if you're a smaller team, but we're going to make the revenue more level. Therefore, your revenue is going to go up. And basically, then you've only got to find sort of maybe 30, 40 million a year, something like that, in terms of sponsorship to be able to go race, but also race profitably as well. And that is something that so few of the teams are able to do, and that we've seen, obviously, your likes of Manor and Caterham and HRT go out of business. You've seen Williams and Force India and Sauber struggle so much, and really that's not healthy for a sport. I mean, we see in football the odd football team go bust, but they're sort of in like Conference North, and you've had some madcap owner come in and think, oh, I'll take them to the Premier League, and it just doesn't happen. F1, like, it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't have teams thinking, oh, we're going to get to the next race, are we going to get to next season? It should be that you have someone like Gene Haas think, right, I want to go into F1, I want to be successful, but also I want to make this a good business and make a profit.
Yeah,
I think you bring up a good point.
Well.
Yeah, I think you make a good point with the manufacturer thing, because you also have to choose what you want F1 to be. So if you give a manufacturer a 10 million sponsor bonus, or just a 10 million bonus for entering, then you're catering towards big names coming into the sport. So that means teams like a HRT, like a Caterham, like a Virgin, those sort of things, like someone who wants to create an F1 team as a project, they might not be so keen because the regs don't favour them. So F1 also has to be aware of how they're going to dish this out, whether they bring one in or the other one. If they dish out this bonus and the big names don't come in, maybe they might have to consider maybe giving the third-party teams a 10 million bonus.
Yeah, if you're a private team, you get a bonus.
Which is what MotoGP do. They give those lower teams a bonus. So, like I said, F1 will be choosing at that point in terms of what they want it to be. So they've got to be careful of how they dish that one out.
Well, I mean, F1 kind of needs a Haas in a way, because it does advertise a sport of a team can get to the front a lot quicker than what we've seen in the past. And I think Force India is a good example. I mean, back in 2007, going into 2008, Force India bought out Spiker, and we move 10 years forward, Spiker, or Force India were solid back of the field pretty much in 2008. You do fast forward 10 years and think, have they made progress? Yes. In 10 years though, is that very enticing to a businessman that goes, yes, I want to buy out a team and move from 11th to 4th? Like, a businessman wants to win. Like most businessmen, the big, like in the same, use a football analogy,
Or
they
just
want to
making
take a conference team.
Yeah, like if they're making profit,
But we need teams like Haas to show.
If they're making profit, then.
I mean, like that's hopefully what 2021 does. Just kind of like makes a roadmap for like people like Gene Haas to just other wealthy businessmen. It's not kind of like I'm just going to burn my cash basically on entering this sport. It's going to be I can make it profitable, and I might not win, but at least I won't go under. At least I'm not, burning cash. It's just going to be a venture they can go into. Or, you never know, it could be a good fuel story. They absolutely, do a madness and, pull off like a Red Bull. They're a smaller company, not a smaller drinks company comes in and like does a madness like that, or just any company really that sponsors like the whole thing. It could be a great marketing opportunity. That's not, because it's not just wealthy businessmen. It could just be companies that are looking like Red Bull. They're just looking to open up a bit more sponsorship exposure. And F1, it's debatable maybe for certain brands how good it is, but if you're the right brand for it, that's your kind of key audience really, it'd be perfect. Obviously, maybe it's going more towards the younger generation now, so that might open up more brands to want to be involved in F1. No longer is it maybe just Rolexes, it's actual affordable brands.
And that's what Liberty wants to achieve. They've really... They've said they want to make F1 so it is a proper brand. It's not just a load of people going racing and let's get Rolex in and you want to be seen on a Monaco yacht or anything. It is actual dynamic brands that want to attract a young audience, work with the sport, work with teams, and that's a healthy business. That's a good business. So
fly Emirates when everyone flies Ryanair,
exactly.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, that's actually a really good analogy, literally.
Yeah, I like that one.
That's good.
Watch me fly Emirates, transatlantic, across the ocean, every day, mate. That's what I do. That's what I live on. Now, realistically, it's just a short half an hour Ryanair flight from A to B.
Yeah. Difference between the chauffeur and a TFL bus. So I think that's kind of wrap up the talks about future talks, like future rules. I guess maybe in terms of like general news in F1, I mean, obviously it's really just the fallout from the Chinese Grand Prix, the biggest being, I guess, just the Ricciardo and Hamilton talk. A lot of talk about Hamilton being nowhere in China, being off his game, needing to bounce back at Azerbaijan, right? And then Ricciardo with the whole, now does this open up to sign to Red Bull? He says he needs more wins. I don't know, Luke. Do you get any kind of vibe? I think you might have interviewed him at least in China, in Australia, in Bahrain, in Australia. Like, I guess from the interviews, he just seems like he generally hasn't made his mind up or at all. He's kind of really just saying how it is. But is there any kind of underlying vibe you got from him at all?
No. Daniel is very hard to read because he's always just nice and funny and jovial, and that's how he is. And even in Australia, I mean, we had events on the Wednesday before the race, before we even got to the track, and already people were asking about his future, and he was like, I knew this was going to happen. And he's like, I'm already bored of this. And at one point he was like, you know what, I'm just going to take next year off. I don't want to do all of this anymore. I don't want to talk to you guys anymore. I just want to go and have a year by the beach, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. Obviously joking, which was a relief because we need him in the sport. I think he's just looking at, he wants to bide his time. I mean, he knows that he holds all the keys to the driving market into next season. He knows, I think, that Mercedes and Ferrari want him. I think Mercedes will look at him as putting him with Lewis, and that, I think, would be the most marketable driver lineup in F1 history. I think it'd be incredible. Yeah. Would Lewis want to work with Ricciardo? Would he want to go up against Ricciardo? Not so sure. Ferrari are very keen on Ricciardo. They were keen on him for this year as well, but there was sort of a feeling that last year he was going to look at trying to get out of Red Bull on the same clause that Vettel did, in which they didn't supply him with a race-winning car. But then he won in Baku, and although he didn't really have a race-winning car, Red Bull could say, well, there's your win. You've got a race-winning car. You can't go anywhere. So that put to bed any sort of suggestion he could move for this season. Again, would Vettel want to work with Ricciardo again? I'm not so sure. Vettel's really built the team around him. Kimi is performing at the moment. And I think we're going to have the annual sort of saga around him. Oh, does he care anymore? Is he motivated? But he is actually doing a pretty good job at the moment. So it might end up being that Red Bull's actually the best option for Ricciardo in the future. But has that now become Max's team? It kind of looks that way. So we'll see. I think what he did in China proved that he is still absolutely one of the best drivers in F1 and probably the better driver in Red Bull right now, because Verstappen proved he's not ready to win a championship. He's not ready to fight at the front. Really, if I were Red Bull, I'd be saying to him, look, just whatever you need, whatever money you want, sign it. We need you for next season.
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah.
Now, do it.
The meme, literally.
You could argue that his win in China has almost complicated things, because after the first 2 rounds, I think he was pretty much set on.
It was looking like,
and then
there's a lot of factors here.
He wins, and he's like, oh well.
I think team morale as well.
To leave. Oh yeah,
I think team morale, just them turning around that issue they had in FP3. You got the sense after that win, he said that obviously it means a lot to him, but he was more ecstatic for the boys that they turned that around. So just for the Red Bull team, because I feel like they were quite negative as well about, like another season, we were hoping we're going to be there. It's not worked out. 2 retirements, Bahrain, come to China. They have to work their arse off like that, and they turn it around, and it becomes literal gold for them.
I think there's more moving chess pieces in play than just Ricciardo. I don't think he only holds the keys to the kingdom. I think Mercedes hold the keys with Bottas. I think Ferrari hold the keys with Raikkonen. And then you've got Verline, you've got Ocon, you've got Charles Leclerc. The rumours of possibly Stoffel Van Dorn going to Renault. And that's one that I've heard, because they might drop Van Dorn apparently. That's like a little rumble in the jungle, I've heard. Because obviously once Sainz leaves Renault, which he could go back to Red Bull if Ricciardo leaves, bear in mind.
Yeah, he's still a Red Bull driver technically.
That would leave a slot open in Renault as well. So what I'm saying is there's a lot more moving pieces in play than just Ricciardo. And I don't really think he actually holds the power here. I think it comes down to whether Mercedes and Ferrari want to drop one of their 2 drivers at the minute. I
always hate when it's that situation, especially for Ferrari, because like so many times in the past, Ferrari just hold on. Like they're very unwilling to drop. I feel like they like to sign. They're unwilling to drop, especially when it comes to like Kimi. I feel like they just have a soft spot. Kind of annoyingly, and this kind of like going into what happened at China, I think they like him because they know they can crap on him so easily in terms of like.
I am getting the vibe though, like he's like, I don't think he's gonna settle for it much longer. I feel like he might.
I hope not, because the guy got slapped in China.
I'm hoping he does bite back, because the way he's been talking lately, I'm just getting the impression where I think he's realised, okay, I've actually got the pace here, and I'm actually a bit gutted that I didn't actually get a bit more out of that race, to be honest. So, yeah, I don't know, Luke, how you can read the unreadable Iceman, but I'm definitely getting the impression he's maybe wishing, or he thinks he could have actually maybe had a W by now at this point of the season.
And he should have, yeah. And weirdly, one of the sort of keys to reading Kimi is Mintu. So after quali in Bahrain, obviously he had provisional pole, and then Seb went a good deal quicker on the final lap. Kimi didn't improve. And then a friend of mine who works for one of the teams sent me a message. He was like, oh, you checked Mintu's Instagram? And I was thinking, what's Mintu put on Instagram? And basically, she'd put up one of these sort of like really cryptic messages saying, oh, what goes around comes around. And I was like, okay, that's a bit weird. And then someone said to me, check out the track map for when like Ferrari sent Kimi out. And I have a look, and basically for his Q3 lap, Ferrari sent Kimi out directly behind 2 cars, so he was never going to improve. He was in traffic, and it was kind of like, but that will suggest that it was just, don't let Kimi go quicker, get Seb quicker, get him on pole. And yeah, so to see Mintu put that up was like interesting, and I think we are starting to see him be a little bit more. Yeah, before he's just been the Iceman and just turns up the track and goes again. Now, even little things like being on Instagram, it's a little bit
he's
more.
He's got a mind of his own now.
He does.
Like, the thing is, if you analyse Kimi, 2 races in a row, he's been on pole right until the very last Q3 lap, where it's just something's happened. China was his own fault because he lost it, but obviously, like you said, Bahrain was something didn't seem to click, and he was very pissed off after qualifying. On Sunday, I'll give Sebastian credit because he seems to have a bit more pace. Like if you look at Bahrain, in that first stint, Raikkonen was sort of just nowhere, and same again in China, albeit after the turn 1 shenanigans.
Squeeze,
However, he's just there a lot more this year. And Ferrari can also say to their credit, we kept him on because we could see that he still had the pace. And I don't doubt it. I think he's been flushed down the toilet a lot more than I think people give him credit for. So I think we could have seen a lot more from him. I think when it comes down to it, Raikkonen still, he does lack, I think, the age situation. I think he does lack that 5%, 10% like Monaco when he got pole. 9 times out of 10, if you get a pole in Monaco, you're probably going to win the race, and he somehow didn't. It's those little things. But in qualifying, at least, he's definitely getting it pretty much perfect. And, it could be the next race. You just don't know. It could be next week and saying, yeah, fair play to Kimi, got the W. So, it's a really sort of, he's edging close. He's at a borderline. The question is, how long will this form last? Or will it last all season? You just never know.
Well, that's one point. But just probably to wrap up this driver market business is, obviously, recently, in previous years, it's been, when will Kimi retire? But if he's on such good form, obviously compared to previous years, is it going to be a retirement from Kimi, or is he wanting to go elsewhere? Or is he literally in a dead end with Ferrari now, where there's nowhere else for him to go?
That'll be the question.
He's not going to be able to get in a Mercedes.
Is his motivation still there? Is he going to be... Will he get to the point where he's like, I've had enough of this. I am quick enough. I can win races. Where else could I go, maybe? I don't know. And I think any other team, they might be looking at Kimi and thinking, even from a marketing point of view, Kimi's so popular. So it'd be a massive win to have him on board. Or whether he goes, look, I've achieved what I wanted to in F1. I'm not going to win so long as I'm being sort of second fiddle to Sebastian. Why don't I just go elsewhere and do something else? So we'll see. But yeah, I think it would be quite interesting if the driver market is sort of set off by not Ferrari sacking Kimi, but Kimi saying to Ferrari, I'm done, I'm quitting, I'm going at the end of the year. That'd be really interesting.
I think it'd be good just for like Raikkonen's sake, like if he sticks it to them rather than vice versa.
It would be such a Kimi move. It would be such a Kimi move.
And then the thing is, if Raikkonen did pull the trigger, then Mercedes might pull the trigger on Bottas, because they might say, right, okay, we don't want to miss out on possibly Ricciardo driving for us. So they might swiftly announce, right, Bottas, ta-ta, and that way there's 2 open seats all of a sudden, and then you've got the situation all bubbling away. So, like I said, I think it's not just Ricciardo that holds the keys to the kingdom in this one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it. For once, like I'm genuinely, there's like genuine substance. Like there's been hope before of a drive market being good, but there's a lot of substance behind a lot of these points now. In terms of like there is going to be a lot of shake up in the drive market at the top end. Where, okay, fair enough, that's mostly where most people care. Unfortunately, like the top end of who drives there. But for the first time, really, I mean, the biggest shake up lastly was basically Vettel moving. But that was kind of just a kind of 2-team swap deal. But you've got 3 big teams involved. And that's just so exciting. So I guess that wraps up the drive market talk then, and the kind of the major F1 news and fallback. And we'll move ahead to the next weekend, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Obviously, Baku was a crazy one, 2017. Here's hoping we can have the exact same sort of thing in 2018. That would be great. Thank you very much, F1. We'll see. It could be an absolute snooze fest. That's also otherwise.
I think that's what's going to happen. That's what tends to happen. You have an absolute
You're usually the
one
optimistic one, so remain optimistic.
Yeah,
Listen, Mr. Bottas and Hamilton 1-2 in every single prediction, right? Don't call me the bloody pessimist here. Okay?
Yeah, for a guy who's not particularly, I've not particularly been amazingly fond of Hamilton over the years. I've predicted him on pole every single time so far, so I need to go something different.
Every W,
and that gets us on to the prediction. So we're going to go for pole first of all. So Luke, you can join us as well. We'll see how wrong we are, maybe compared to you. Maybe being a journalist,
really
having that inside edge, you've got that rubber crystal ball, maybe. So,
I've been pretty consistent this year. I'll put my hand up and say I ain't been too bad this year. I think
you've been the best, surprisingly. I'm going to say that.
W's, I ain't been too bad. So
and this is where it all goes downhill.
I've got this under control. Don't worry. So I'm gonna kick it off again. I'm gonna go for it. I'm going to say pole position, and this is very out there, but I've been impressed. I'm going to say Bottas.
Okay.
He's been so close the last 2 races from really just getting a pole or a win, just sort of putting the ice on the cake. Similar to Raikkonen, Bottas is going to get pole, and then on Sunday, I think Raikkonen's going to win. Bottas is going to get 2nd. Vettel's going to get 3rd, Hamilton 4th, and I'm going to say Ricciardo 5th.
Okay.
Interesting.
The ice men are going to come out and play.
Right, the 2 fins.
Right, I'll put my cards down. I'm going to put a Ferrari on pole. I'm going to put a Vettel on pole, because I'm going to predict that Mercedes are just not going to get the tyres working again, and they're going to have to avoid that softest compound, even though they've taken lots of the ultra soft, so that's going to be even more interesting. Let's say a Bottas win. Let's say a Hamilton 2nd. Let's slap Vettel on the podium. then let's put Ricardo 4th, and then Raikkonen 5th. That's probably going to be completely wrong, but it's very hard to predict.
Okay, Luke, do you want to go?
I'm going to go with a Vettel pole, and I think a Ferrari 1-2. I'm going to say I'm going to back that with Vettel leading home Kimi, a disgruntled Kimi again, and then let's say Ricardo to complete the podium. I think the tyre situation is going to be difficult. Yeah, and then the Mercs maybe 4th and 5th, Hamilton ahead of Bottas.
So we've all gone, except for aarava at the moment, we've all gone for 4 L's in the consecutive hybrid era row for Mercedes. Aarava, will you complete the set?
I think I might do, to be honest. I'm gonna go pole. Kimi finally going to get it done on the Saturday. Finally not going to get screwed over. Maybe Mintu can post a great positive one on Instagram then. In the race, though, I'm going to go with Vettel. Get it in the race, though, as he always usually does. And, we'll skirt aside if that's him or the team. Vettel first place. I'll go Hamilton second, wrestling the car up to second, because I don't think the Merc will go well, I don't think. I'll go Ricardo third. I'll join Luke on that. I think Ricardo will be so off his high from the win that he'll manage to pull off something great, even though Baku, shouldn't be too great. Verstappen already saying that he's sceptical about the performance. Then who have I got left? I've got Raikkonen, I'll say 4th. Probably very pissed off at that point.
You've done him dirty.
I have. I'll go with because Bottas had such a good start. It's a cruel sport. I'll say he doesn't even make it into top 5. I'll put P5. Just because he's in my fantasy team, I'll put P5 Fernando Alonso. Doesn't madness. P5.
Madness.
I've realised I haven't based any of my predictions off my fantasy team whatsoever. I'm going completely against Wyatt.
Bodes well for me because I'm versing you in our little group chat.
Yeah, we are.
So you're gonna no faith, Cal. No faith.
Taking the L's. Someone's taking the L's after Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, I like this though. I think the fact again this year, we were saying after China, it's a good feel of genuinely. There's Ferrari look the most comfortable in the race, especially, but now Red Bull coming to the fray and Baku obviously being such a different circuit. Again, we've had 4 different circuits. You just can't really get a full picture in your mind like we might have done 2 years ago in 2016 or 2015 or even really 2017 towards the end with Ferrari just nosediving. I'm liking it. And Baku, well, unlike Tom, let's hope it's another great one.
I mean, I'm always hoping. I'm just saying I don't think it's going to happen.
Right, yeah. Well, I really hope
F1 doesn't do miracle stories.
Yeah, I hope we can say well done, Baku, at the end. I really do. But I think that's where we're going to wrap it up because I think this is just about towards an hour. So that's been podcast number 80. Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. And guys, follow Crash.net. As Luke said, one of the few independent news outlets left. And I've said this on Twitter before, but I'm a big believer of I don't like the monopoly that an unnamed brand source kind of umbrella company has on F1 media. So check out obviously Luke on Twitter as well. Our Twitter handles, all 4 of us will be on the screen right now. So check out Luke. He tweets throughout obviously the Grand Prix, not just covering F1 though, a lot of other sports as well, but he's the main F1 editor over there at Crash.net. So check him out on Twitter. Links to Callum and Tom in the description. Remember, I didn't actually mention it at the start, but obviously you would have seen it maybe on screen, but we're on Patreon, so if you do like what we're doing over here, you want to help us grow directly, then you can check out the link on Patreon. We're also on audio, SoundCloud, and iTunes. Again, links below. But that has been podcast number 80. Preview of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but really a lot of talk about the future rules, which all sound great. And I guess we'll check you guys out for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix review. Let's hope we can say well done, Baku, for that review. Straight at the start of that one. But for this one, that's it. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye. All right, so we've got a Patreon question here. So this comes from James. Oh my God, I can't pronounce his. I'm so sorry, my man. Kalanatsis. I think I've done a good job there. James Kalanatsis. So he's one of our Patreon backers in the 2nd tier. So he's got access to our Discord server, so you can ask questions directly. So he asked, and I guess it's a question for all 3 of you. Any 5 tracks you can bring onto the calendar that haven't been on an F1 calendar before? What do you pick? Give us some thinking time. We can edit that out.
That haven't ever been on.
That's a good question.
Bloody hell! I'm thinking.
I think you're struggling for 5.
Well, yeah, you maybe are struggling for 5. Maybe okay.
Actually, no.
Maybe you don't have to be uber realistic.
I'm not struggling. I can dip into a lot of MotoGP knowledge for this one, so I'm not.
I literally just thought of MotoGP. I was just like, what tracks do I know from MotoGP?
I'm not going to hold back, but I mean, it's pretty true. I'm trying to think. of the MotoGP tracks, which one would suit 2 or 4-wheeled vehicles 2 wide or 3 wide situations? So I'm trying to think. There's ones that I really enjoy, and there's the ones that just occur. So I think top of the list, no particular order, but one that just straight across my head, I would say Phillip Island, Australia. If you haven't seen it, then watch it. If third tier isn't a factor, that would be madness because there's so much elevation change, lots of sharp corners, and also fast flowing ones. It's the sort of thing Tilke likes, but
Yeah.
you know, the done properly. Phillip Island, I think, would be a great track. I think Mugello would be a good track as well. Lots of overtaking opportunities there as well. I would like to see something like in DTM. I know it's only a short track, but something like the Norris Ring. I know it's only short, but like a tight street track with a lot of 90-degree corners, short squirts on the throttle, maybe allows opportunities for overtaking. I don't know if everyone's ever done Le Mans before. No, asterisk.
I don't think it has.
But even then, I don't think the MotoGP layout would really work for that. Maybe the turn 1, or turn 2 technically with a chicane.
That use up all the tracks, otherwise we're going to not have anything to talk about.
Hey, I'm just naming. I've got to be honest. Qatar could be a good F1 track. Qatar could be really good. I think there's a lot of overtaking opportunities there if they wished to go there. I mean, I'm struggling here, so you're going to chime in.
I think Macau would be top of my list.
I was thinking Macau, yeah.
Mega to have F1 there. I don't think it would ever happen just because it's so utterly ridiculous. And last year proved that
literally.
Oh God.
Third tier would just make everyone just go straight into the barrier. Like, yeah, I'm not making this corner, dog. That's going to be a no from me. Hard no from me.
Can I throw a Bathurst into this one?
Oh, yes.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine? There's a Bathurst, and obviously the 2 Dutch tracks. I don't know whether F1's gone around. Zolder and Zandvoort. Have they got? Is F1 gone to there?
I would put in Assen because I'm guilty. It's my favourite MotoGP track of all time. Assen would be my guilty throw in because that is also a very sexy track in my opinion.
I've run out of tracks.
Very.
I actually can't think of any others.
I'd love to see Sonoma from IndyCar as well because that's got so many elevation changes and sunset and it'd be brilliant. So good.
Is it Sebring? Have they ever gone there?
Sebring.
In the 50s, I think.
I mean, the bumpiness would be a bit of a.
I love that. When I used to drive that track on iRacing, that was like one of my favourite. Very narrow, very tight and twisty, but brilliant drive, brilliant little track as well. You'd have a good bit of overtaking like down the massive back straight, but
our track knowledge is really cool. I'm trying to think, is Long Beach the one where you have the roundabout where it's got like the actual field in the middle? That would be quite a spectacle. Just see an F1 like we have it with Monaco, but to see it go around like a roundabout like that would be sweet.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm thinking possibly. I would like to see Aragon in Spain as well. That would be interesting because that's it's reminiscent of Turkey in many ways. In the way that the track is, especially the first sector. A lot of elevation change, a couple of chicanes, lots of heavy braking zones, a massive back straight, which, F1 really likes these days. That would be one. Because it's all got a nice mix. Turn 1 and 2 and 3 is like Turkey, the first couple of corners. The back straight is like Singapore. So like with Singapore, the final corner, you feed into that double aim left-hander.
Yeah.
But it's much more of a bend. And then you've got a lot of sort of hard chicanes and just sort of a lot of intertwining sections. So Aragon would be another track I'd throw in there. But yeah, I think maybe not 5 each, but we're all sort of...
Yeah, we cobbled together a whole heap of tracks that we'd like to see.
I want to hear one from you.
My track knowledge is appalling, so I'm not even throwing my hand to the ring. So I'm going to go with Long Beach. That's my one track. Played it on Forza, and that's how I know it. So I'm going to throw that in. Some alternative layouts to already what circuits we have that we call in terms of I know that's not the question, but alternate layouts. But I'm really crap with track knowledge. But thanks, guys. You made up for that question for me, so good stuff. But yeah, that's been James' question for the Patreon. But now we'll truly say goodbye on the video. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.